Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome back to the live studios here at Radha Lane, ISKCON of Houston, right next to Sri Sri Radha Neelamadhava's temple. And we're here with a group of eager hearers, people with the taste, devotees with a taste for hearing Bhagavad-gita, lucky souls, good fortunate souls. And we've reached the 15th chapter of the Gita. This is a real sense of progress, a real sense of accomplishment. When you hear together the whole Gita all the way through with devotees, it's a real beautiful sense of accomplishment. But before we go ahead, we're going to read Srila Prabhupada's Mangala Charana prayers, the auspicious invocation that he made before he started to translate and comment on the Bhagavad-gita as it is. It goes like this. Om Ajnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutade Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadhati Swapadantikam. I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. When will Srila Rupa Goswami Prabhupada, who is established within this material world, the mission to fulfill the desire of Lord Chaitanya, give me shelter under his lotus feet? Bandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavans Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sujivam Sadvaitam Sabhadutam Purijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitam Cha. I offer my respectful obeisances under the lotus feet of my spiritual master and under the feet of all Vaishnavas. I offer my respectful obeisances under the lotus feet of Srila Rupa Goswami, along with his elder brother, Sanatan Goswami, as well as Raghunath Das and Raghunath Bhatta, Gopal Bhatta, and Srila Jiva Goswami. I offer my respectful obeisances to Lord Krishna Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, along with Advaita Acharya, Gadadhar, Srivasa, and other associates. I offer my respectful obeisances to Srimati Radharani and Sri Krishna, along with their associates, Sri Lalita and Vishaka. He Krishna, Karuna Sindho, Dinabandho Jagatpate, Gopisha Gopika Kanta, Radha Kanta Namostute. O my dear Krishna, ocean of mercy, you are the friend of the distressed and the source of creation. You are the master of the cowherd men and the lover of the gopis, especially Srimati Radharani. I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. I offer my respects to Radharani, whose bodily complexion is like molten gold, and who is the queen of Vrindavan. You are the daughter of King Vrishabhanu, and you are very dear to Lord Krishna. Bancha kalpadurubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto all the Vaishnav devotees of the Lord. They can fulfill the desires of everyone, just like desired trees, and they are full of compassion for the fallen souls. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. I offer my obeisances to Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhara, Shivasa, and all others in the line of devotion. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. We heard about the modes of material nature, how they act, and how we are entangled in them. The first part, the first installment of that knowledge in the last chapter, 14. Now we're going to hear chapter 15, the yoga of the Supreme Person. It has a little introduction to it. It's not in the book, but they put it in the Veda base, which I'm reading for. That's what I'm reading. The ultimate purpose of Vedic knowledge is to detach oneself from the entanglement of the material world and to understand Lord Krsna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One who understands Krishna's supreme identity surrenders unto him and engages in his devotional service. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Udbamulam Adakshakam Ashwatang Prahuravyayam Chandang Si Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, "It is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas." Purport. After the discussion of the importance of Bhakti Yoga, one may question, what about the Vedas? It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas. The entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree. For one who is engaged in fruitive activities, there is no end to the banyan tree. He wanders from one branch to another, to another, to another. The tree of this material world has no end, and for one who is attached to this tree, there is no possibility of liberation. The Vedic hymns meant for elevating oneself are called the leaves of this tree. This tree's roots grow upward because they begin from where Lord Brahma is located, the topmost planet of this universe. If one can understand this indestructible tree of illusion, then one can get out of it. This process of extrication should be understood. In the previous chapters, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. And up to the 13th chapter, we have seen that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the best way. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. The process of breaking material existence grows upward. This means that it begins from the total material substance, from the topmost planet of the universe. From there, the whole universe is expanded, with so many branches representing the various planetary systems. The fruits represent the results of the living entity's activities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Now, there is no ready experience in this world of a tree situated with its branches down and its roots upward, but there is such a thing. That tree can be found beside a reservoir of water. We can see that the trees on the bank reflect upon the water with their branches down and roots up. In other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire. just as a tree's reflection is situated on water. Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of this material existence must know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. Problem?
No, I was checking. It said connection earlier. It seems to be flowing.
It's okay. It's not on the Wi-Fi. I took it off Wi-Fi. This tree, being the reflection of the real tree, is an exact replica. Everything is there in the spiritual world. The impersonalists take Brahman to be the root of this material tree. And from the root, according to Sankhya philosophy, come Prakriti, Purusha, then the 3 gunas, then the 5 gross elements, Pancha Mahabhuta, then the 10 senses, Dashendriya, mind, and so on. In this way they divide up the whole material world into 24 elements. If Brahman is the center of all manifestations, then this material world is the manifestation of the center by 180 degrees, and the other 180 degrees constitute the spiritual world. The material world is the perverted reflection, so the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness, but in reality, the Prakriti is the external energy of the Supreme Lord, and the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself, and that is explained in Bhagavad-gita. Since this manifestation is material, it is temporary. A reflection is temporary, for it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen. But the origin from whence the reflection is reflected is eternal. The material reflection of the real tree has to be cut off. When it is said that a person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment to this material world. If one knows that process, he actually knows the Vedas. One who was attracted by the ritualistic formulas of the Vedas is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the tree. He does not exactly know the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas, as disclosed by the Personality of Godhead himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. Text 2. Adash chordvam prashritas tasya shaka guna pravrida vishaya pravalaha adas chamulan yanusantatani karmanubandini manushaloke. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the 3 modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. This tree also has roots going down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. Purport. The description of the banyan tree is further explained here. Its branches spread in all directions. In the lower parts, there are variegated manifestations of living entities, human beings, animals, horses, cows, dogs, cats, and so on. These are situated on the lower parts of the branches, whereas on the upper parts are higher forms of living entities, the demigods, Gandharvas, and many other higher species of life. As a tree is nourished by water, so this tree is nourished by the 3 modes of material nature. Sometimes we find that a tract of land is barren for want of sufficient water, and sometimes a tract is very green. Similarly, where particular modes of material nature are proportionately greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. The twigs of the tree are considered to be the sense objects. By development of the different modes of nature, we develop different senses, and by the senses, we enjoy different varieties of sense objects. The tips of the branches are the senses, the ears, nose, eyes, etc., which are attached to the enjoyment of different sense objects. The twigs are sound, form, touch, and so on, the sense objects. The subsidiary roots are attachments and aversions, which are byproducts of different varieties of suffering, and sense enjoyment. The tendencies toward piety and impiety are considered to develop from these secondary roots, which spread in all directions. The real root is from Brahmaloka, and the other roots are in the human planetary systems. After one enjoys the results of virtuous activities in the upper planetary systems, he comes down to this earth and renews his karma, or fruitive activities, for promotion. This planet of human beings is considered the field of activities. Text 3 and 4. Narupam asye hantato palabhyate nanto nachadir nachapsam pratishta ashvatam enam subirudamulam asanga shastrena dridhaina vichitva tatak padam tat parimargitavyam yasmin gata nanivarti bhuyaha tam eva chadyam purusham prapadye yatak pravriti prasritita purani. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began, and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Purport. It is now clearly stated that the real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Since the root is upwards, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. When entangled with the material expansions of the tree, one cannot see how far the tree extends, nor can one see the beginning of this tree. Yet one has to find out the cause. I am the son of my father. My father is the son of such and such a person. So on. By searching in this way, one comes to Brahma, who is generated by the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of research work. One has to search out that origin of this tree, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through the association of persons who are in knowledge of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, by understanding, one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of reality, and by knowledge, one can cut off the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. The word asanga is very important in this connection, because the attachment for sense enjoyment and lording it over the material nature is very strong. Therefore, one must learn detachment by discussion of spiritual science based on the authoritative scriptures, and one must hear from persons who are actually in knowledge. As a result of such discussion in the association of devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the first thing one must do is surrender to Him. The description of that place whence, having gone, one never returns to this false reflected tree is given here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original root from whom everything is emanated. To gain favor of that Personality of Godhead, one has only to surrender, and this is the result of performing devotional service by hearing, chanting, and so on. He is the cause of the extension of the material world. This has already been explained by the Lord Himself. Aham sarvasya prabhava. I am the origin of everything. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of this strong banyan tree of material life, one must surrender to Krishna. As soon as one surrenders unto Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from this material extension. Text 5. Nirmana moha jitasanga dosha atyatma nitya vinivritta kamaha dvandvar vimukta sukadukha samgyayar gachchantya modak paramavyayam tat. Those who are free from false prestige, illusion, and false association, who understand the eternal, who are done with material lust, who are freed from the dualities of happiness and distress, and who, unbewildered, know how to surrender unto the Supreme Person, attain to that eternal kingdom. Purport. The surrendering process is described here very nicely. The first qualification is that one should not be deluded by pride, because the conditioned soul is puffed up, thinking himself the lord of material nature. It is very difficult for him to surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One should know by the cultivation of real knowledge that he is not lord of material nature. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the Lord. When one is free from delusion caused by pride, he can begin the process of surrender. For one who is always expecting some honor in this material world, it is not possible to surrender to the Supreme Person. Pride is due to illusion, for although one comes here, stays for a brief time, and then goes away, he has the foolish notion that he is the Lord of the world. He thus makes all things complicated, and he is always in trouble. The whole world moves under his impression, under this impression. People are considering the land, this earth, to belong to human society, and they've divided the land under the false impression that they are the proprietors. Memo to Trump. One has to get out of this false notion that human society is the proprietor of this world. When one is freed from such a false notion, he becomes free from all the false associations caused by familial, social, and national affections. These faulty associations bind one to this material world. After this stage, one has to develop spiritual knowledge. One has to cultivate knowledge of what is actually his own and what is actually not his own. And when one has an understanding of things as they are, he becomes free from all dual conceptions such as happiness and distress, pleasure and pain. He becomes full in knowledge. Then it is possible for him to surrender to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 6. Natad bhasyate suryo nashashanko napavakaha nad yadgatva nanivartante tadhama paramamama. That supreme abode of mind is not illumined by the sun or moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never return to this material world. Purport. The spiritual world, the abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, which is known as Krishna Loka, Goloka Vrindavan, is described here. In the spiritual sky there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, fire, or electricity, because all the planets are self-luminous. We have only one planet in this universe, the sun, which is self-luminous. But all the planets in the spiritual sky are self-luminous. The shining effulgence of all those planets, called Vaikunthas, constitutes the shining sky, known as the Brahmajyoti. Actually, the effulgence is emanating from the planet of Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan. Part of that shining effulgence is covered by the Mahatattva, the material world. Other than this, the major portion of that shining sky is full of spiritual planets, which are called Vaikuntha Lokas, Vaikunthas, chief of which is Goloka Vrindavan. As long as a living entity is in this dark material world, he is in conditional life. But as soon as he reaches the spiritual sky, by cutting through the false, perverted tree of this material world, he becomes liberated. Then there is no chance of his coming back here. In his conditional life, the living entity considers himself to be the lord of this material world. But in his liberated state, he enters into the spiritual kingdom and becomes an associate of the Supreme Lord. There, he enjoys eternal bliss, eternal life, and full knowledge. One should be captivated by this information. He should desire to transfer himself to that eternal world and extricate himself from this false reflection of reality. For one who is too much attached to this material world, it is very difficult to cut that attachment. But if he takes to Krishna consciousness, there is a chance of gradually becoming detached. One has to associate himself with devotees, those who are in Krishna consciousness. One should search out a society dedicated to Krishna consciousness and learn how to discharge devotional service. In this way he can cut off his attachment to the material world. One cannot become detached from the attraction of the material world simply by dressing himself in saffron cloth. He must become attached to the devotional service of the Lord. Therefore one should take it very seriously that devotional service... No, Siri, we don't mean you. Thank you. Therefore, one should take it very seriously that devotional service, as described in the 12th chapter, is the only way to get out of this false representation of the real tree. In chapter 14, the contamination of all kinds of processes by material nature is described. Only devotional service is described as purely transcendental. The words paramam mama are very important here. Actually, every nook and corner is the property of the Supreme Lord. But the spiritual world is paramam, full of 6 opulences. The Katha Upanishad also confirms that in the spiritual world there is no need of sunshine, moonshine, or stars. Na tatra suryo bhati na chandratar takam. For the whole spiritual sky is illuminated by the internal potency of the Supreme Lord. That supreme abode can be achieved only by surrender and by no other means. Text 7. Mamaibang cho jiva loke jiva bhutak sanatanaha manak shastranindriyani prakriti stani karshati. The living entities in this conditioned world are my eternal fragmental parts. Due to conditioned life, they are struggling very hard with the 6 senses, which include the mind. Purport. In this verse, the identity of the living being is clearly given. The living entity is the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, eternally. It is not that he assumes individuality in his conditional life, and in his liberated state becomes one with the Supreme Lord. He is eternally fragmented. It is clearly said, Sanatanaha. According to the Vedic version, the Supreme Lord manifests and expands himself in innumerable expansions, of which the primary expansions are called Vishnu Tattva, and the secondary expansions are called the living entities. In other words, the Vishnu Tattva is the personal expansion, and the living entities are the separated expansions. By his personal expansion, he is manifested in various forms, like Lord Rama, Nrsingadeva, Vishnu Murti, and all the predominating deities in the Vaikuntha planets. The separated expansions, the living entities, are eternally servitors. The personal expansions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the individual identities of the Godhead, are always present. Similarly, the separated expansions of living entities have their identities. As fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, the living entities also have fragmental portions of his qualities, of which independence is one. Every living entity, as an individual soul, has his personal individuality and a minute form of independence. By misuse of that independence, one becomes a conditioned soul, and by proper use of independence, he is always liberated. In either case, he is qualitatively eternal, as the Supreme Lord is. In his liberated state, he is freed from this material condition, and he is under the engagement of transcendental service unto the Lord. In his conditioned life, he is dominated by the material modes of nature, and he forgets the transcendental loving service of the Lord. As a result, he has to struggle very hard to maintain his existence in the material world. The living entities, not only human beings and the cats and dogs, But even the greater controllers of the material world, Brahma, Lord Shiva, and even Vishnu, are all parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. They are all eternal, not temporary manifestations. The word karshati, struggling or grappling hard, is very significant. The conditioned soul is bound up as though shackled by iron chains. He is bound up by the false ego, and the mind is the chief agent which is driving him in this material existence. When the mind is in the mode of goodness, his activities are good. When the mind is in the mode of passion, his activities are troublesome. And when the mind is in the mode of ignorance, he travels in the lower species of life. It is clear, however, in this verse, that the conditioned soul is covered by the material body with the mind and the senses, and when he is liberated, this material covering perishes, but his spiritual body manifests itself in its individual capacity. The following information is there in the Madhyadinanyana Shruti. It is stated here that when a living entity gives up this material embodiment and enters into the spiritual world, he revives his spiritual body, and in his spiritual body he can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. He can hear and speak to him face to face, and he can understand the Supreme Personality as he is. From Smriti also it is understood, Basanti yatra purushak sarve vaikunta murtiyaha. In the spiritual planets, everyone lives in bodies featured like the Supreme Personality of Godheads. As far as bodily construction is concerned, there is no difference between part and parcel living entities and the expansions of Vishnu Murti. In other words, at liberation, the living entity gets a spiritual body by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The words Mamai Vangsha, fragmental parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are also very significant. The fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is not like some material broken part. We have already understood in the second chapter that the spirit cannot be cut into pieces. This fragment is not materially conceived. It is not like matter, which can be cut into pieces and joined together again. That conception is not applicable here because the Sanskrit word sanatana, eternal, is used. The fragmental portion is eternal. It is also stated in the beginning of the second chapter that in each and every individual body, the fragmental portion of the Supreme Lord is present. Tehino smin yata dehe. That fragmental portion, when liberated from the bodily entanglement, revives its original spiritual body in the spiritual sky, in a spiritual planet, and enjoys association with the Supreme Lord. It is, however, understood here that the living entity, being the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is qualitatively one with the Lord, just as the parts and parcels of gold are also gold. Classic purport. Text 8. Shadiram yad avapnoti yachchap utkramatishvaraha grihit vaitani samyati vayurgandan ivashayat. The living entity in the material world carries his different conceptions of life from one body to another as the air carries aromas. Thus he takes one kind of body and again quits it to take another. Purport. Here the living entity is described as Ishvara, the controller of his own body. If he likes, he can change his body to a higher grade, and if he likes, he can move to a lower class. Minute independence is there. The change his body undergoes depends upon him. At the time of death, the consciousness he has created will carry him on to the next type of body. If he has made his consciousness like that of a cat or dog, he is sure to change to a cat's or dog's body. And if he has fixed his consciousness on godly qualities, he will change into the form of a demigod. And if he is in Krishna consciousness, he will be transferred to Krishna Loka in the spiritual world and will associate with Krishna. It is a false claim that after the annihilation of this body, everything is finished. The individual soul is transmigrating from one body to another, and his present body and present activities are the background of his next body. One gets a different body according to karma, and he has to quit this body in due course. It is stated here that the subtle body, which carries the conception of the next body, develops another body in the next life. This process of transmigrating from one body to another and struggling while in the body is called karshati, or struggle for existence. Text 9. Shotram chakshus sparshanam cha rasanam granameva cha adishtaya manaschayam vishayan upasevate. The living entity, thus taking another gross body, obtains a certain type of ear, eye, tongue, nose, and sense of touch, which are grouped about the mind. He thus enjoys a particular set of sense objects. Purport. In other words, if the living entity adulterates his consciousness with the qualities of cats and dogs, in his next life he will get a cat or a dog body and enjoys. He gets a cat or a dog body and enjoys. Consciousness is originally pure, like water, but if we mix water with a certain color, it changes. Similarly, consciousness is pure, for the spirit soul is pure, but consciousness is changed according to the association of the material qualities. Real consciousness is Krishna consciousness. When, therefore, one is situated in Krishna consciousness, he is in his pure life. But if his consciousness is adulterated by some type of material mentality, in the next life he gets a corresponding body. He does not necessarily get a human body again. He can get the body of a cat, dog, hog, demigod, or one of many other forms, for there are 8,400,000 species. Text 10. Utkramantam stitam vapi Unjanam bhagunan vitam vimudha nanupashanti pashanti jnanachakshushaha. The foolish cannot understand how a living entity can quit his body, nor can they understand what sort of body he enjoys under the spell of the modes of nature. But one whose eyes are trained in knowledge can see all this. Purport. The word jnana-chakshusha is very significant. Without knowledge, one cannot understand how a living entity leaves his present body, nor what form of body he is going to take in the next life, nor even why he is living in a particular type of body. This requires a great amount of knowledge, understood from Bhagavad-gita and similar literatures, heard from a bona fide spiritual master. One who is trained to perceive all these things is fortunate. He is living under certain circumstances, and he is enjoying under certain circumstances under the spell of material nature. As a result, he is suffering different kinds of happiness and distress under the illusion of sense enjoyment. Persons who are everlastingly fooled by lust and desire lose all power to understand their change of body and their stay in a particular body. They cannot comprehend it. Those who have developed spiritual knowledge, however, can see that the spirit is different from the body and is changing its body and enjoying in different ways. A person in such knowledge can understand how the conditioned living entity is suffering in this material existence. Therefore, those who are highly developed in Krishna consciousness try their best to give this knowledge to the people in general, for their conditional life is very much troublesome. They should come out of it and be Krishna conscious and liberate themselves to transfer to the spiritual world. Text 11. Yatanto yoginas chainam pashantyat manyavastitam yatanto yapikritat akritatmano nainam pashyantya chetasaha. The endeavoring transcendentalists who were situated in self-realization can see all this clearly, but those whose minds are not developed and who are not situated in self-realization cannot see what is taking place, though they may try. Purport. There are many transcendentalists on the path of spiritual realization, but one who is not situated in self-realization cannot see how things are changing in the body of the living entity. The word yogina is significant in this connection. In the present day, there are many so-called yogis, and there are many so-called associations of yogis, but they are actually blind in the matter of self-realization. They are simply addicted to some sort of gymnastic exercise and are satisfied if the body is well built and healthy. They have no other information. They are called yatanto pyakritatmana. Even though they are endeavoring in a so-called yoga system, they are not self-realized. Such people cannot understand the process of the transmigration of the soul. Only those who are actually in the yoga system and have realized the self, the world, and the Supreme Lord, in other words, the bhakti yogis, those engaged in pure devotional service in Krishna consciousness, can understand how things are taking place. Text 12. Yad aditya gatam tejo jagad bhasya te kilam yach chandamasi yach jagnau yat tejo vidimamakam. The splendor of the sun. The splendor of the what?
Sun.
Just checking. The splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of this whole world, comes from me. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of fire are also from me. Purport. The unintelligent cannot understand how things are taking place. But one can begin to be established in knowledge by understanding what the Lord explains here. Everyone sees the sun, moon, fire, and electricity. One should simply try to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, and the splendor of electricity or fire are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In such a conception of life, the beginning of Krishna consciousness, lies a great deal of advancement for the conditioned soul in this material world. The living entities are essentially the parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, and He is giving herewith the hint how they can come back to Godhead, back to home. From this verse we can understand that the sun is illuminating the whole universe. There are different universes, and there are different suns, moons, and planets also. But in each universe, there is only one sun. As stated in Bhagavad-gita 10:21, the moon is one of the stars, nakshatranam aham shashi. Sunlight is due to the spiritual effulgence in the spiritual sky of the Supreme Lord. With the rise of the sun, the activities of human beings are set up. They set fire to prepare their foodstuff. They set fire to start the factories, and so on. So many things are done with the help of fire. Therefore, sunrise, fire, and moonlight are so pleasing to the living entities. Without their help, no living entity can live. So if one can understand that the light and splendor of the sun, moon, and fire are emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, then one's Krishna consciousness will begin. By the moonshine, all the vegetables are nourished. The moonshine is so pleasing that people can easily understand that they are living by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Without His mercy, there cannot be sun. Without His mercy, there cannot be moon. And without His mercy, there cannot be fire. And without the help of the sun, moon, and fire, no one can live. These are some thoughts to provoke Krishna consciousness in the conditioned soul. Text 13. Gam avisha jabutani darayam yahamojasa pushnami chashudi sarva somabhutva rasatmakaha. I enter into each planet, and by my energy they stay in orbit. I become the moon, and thereby supply the juice of life to all vegetables. Purport. It is understood that all the planets are floating in the air only by the energy of the Lord. The Lord enters into every atom, every planet, and every living being. That is discussed in the Brahma Samhita. It is said there that one plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Paramatma, enters into the planets, the universe, the living entity, and even into the atom. So due to his entrance, everything is appropriately manifested. When the spirit soul is there, a living man can float on the water, but when the living spark is out of the body and the body is dead, the body sinks. Of course, when it is decomposed, it floats, just like straw and other things, but as soon as the man is dead, he at once sinks in the water. Similarly, all these planets are floating in space, and this is due to the entrance of the supreme energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His energy is sustaining each planet, just like a handful of dust. If someone holds a handful of dust, there is no possibility of the dust falling, but if one throws it in the air, it will fall down. Similarly, these planets, which are floating in the air, are actually held in the fist of the universal form of the Supreme Lord. By his strength and energy, all moving and non-moving beings stay in their place. It is said in the Vedic hymns that because of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the sun is shining and the planets are steadily moving. Were it not for him, all the planets would scatter like dust in air and perish. This is at the end of text 13, purport. Similarly, it is due to the Supreme Personality of Godhead that the moon nourishes all vegetables. Due to the moon's influence, the vegetables become delicious. Without the moonshine, the vegetables can neither grow nor taste succulent. Human society is working, living comfortably, and enjoying food due to the supply from the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, mankind could not survive. The word rasatmaka is very significant. Everything becomes palatable by the agency of the Supreme Lord through the influence of the moon. Text 14. Ahang Vaishvanaro Bhutva Praninam Deham Ashritaha Prana Pana Samayukta Pachamyanam Chaturvidam. I am the fire of digestion in the bodies of all living entities, and I join with the air of life, outward, outgoing, and incoming, to digest the four kinds of foodstuffs. Purport. According to the Ayurvedic science, or Shastra, according to the Ayurvedic Shastra, we understand that there is a fire in the stomach which digests all food sent there. When the fire is not blazing, there is no hunger, and when the fire is in order, we become hungry. Sometimes when the fire is not going nicely, treatment is required. In any case, this fire is representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedic mantras, Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, also confirm that the Supreme Lord, or Brahman, is situated in the form of fire within the stomach and is digesting all kinds of foodstuffs. Ayam Agnir Vaishvarano Yo Yam Antat Purushe Yenidam Anam Prachate. Therefore, since he is helping the digestion of all kinds of foodstuff, the living entity is not independent in the eating process. Wow. unless the Supreme Lord helps him in digesting, there's no possibility of eating. He thus produces and digests foodstuffs, and by His grace, we are enjoying life. In the Vedanta Sutra, this is also confirmed. Shabda biyo shabdadi biontak pratishthanach. The Lord is situated within sound, and within the body, within the air, and even within the stomach as the digestive force. There are 4 kinds of foodstuff. Some are drunk, some are chewed, some are licked up, and some are sucked. And He is the digestive force for all of them. Text 15, this is a very important verse. Sarvasya chaham hridi sanavisto matak smritir jnanam apoanham ja vedaishcha sarvar aham eva vedyo vedantakrit vedavit eva chaham. Translation: I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of the Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. Purport: the Supreme Lord is situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, and it is from Him that all activities are initiated. The living entity forgets everything of his past life, but he has to act according to the direction of the Supreme Lord, who is witness to all his work. Therefore he begins his work according to his past deeds. Required knowledge is supplied to him, and remembrance is given to him, and he forgets also about his past life. Thus, the Lord is not only all-pervading, He is also localized in every individual heart. He awards the different fruitive results. He is worshipable not only as the impersonal Brahman, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the localized Paramatma, but as the form of the incarnation of the Vedas as well. The Vedas give the right direction to people so that they can properly mold their lives and come back to Godhead, back to home. The Vedas offer knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and Krishna, in his incarnation as Vyasadeva, is the compiler of the Vedanta Sutra. The commentation on the Vedanta Sutra by Vyasadeva in the Srimad Bhagavatam gives the real understanding of Vedanta Sutra. The Supreme Lord is so full that for the deliverance of the conditioned soul, He is the supplier and digester of foodstuff, the witness of His activity, and the giver of knowledge in the form of the Vedas, and as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, the teacher of the Bhagavad-gita. He is worshipable by the conditioned soul. Thus, God is all good, God is all merciful. Antak pravishtak shasta jananam. The living entity forgets as soon as he quits his present body, but he begins his work again, initiated by the Supreme Lord. Although he forgets, the Lord gives him the intelligence to renew his work where he ended his last life. So not only does the living entity enjoy or suffer in this world according to the dictation from the Supreme Lord situated locally in the heart, but he receives the opportunity to understand the Vedas from him. If one is serious about understanding the Vedic knowledge, then Krishna gives the required intelligence. Why does he present the Vedic knowledge for understanding? Because the living entity individually needs to understand Krishna. Vedic literature confirms this. Yo sao sarvair vidar giyate. In all Vedic literature, beginning from the 4 Vedas, Vedanta Sutra, and the Upanishads and Puranas, the glories of the Supreme Lord are celebrated. By performance of the Vedic rituals, discussion of the Vedic philosophy, and worship of the Lord in devotional service, he is attained. Therefore, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. The Vedas give us direction by which to understand Krishna and the process of realizing Him. The ultimate goal is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vedanta Sutra 114 confirms this in the following words: Tat tu saman bayat. One can attain perfection in 3 stages. By understanding Vedic literature, one can understand his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By performing the different processes, one can approach him, and at the end, one can attain the supreme goal, who is no other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this verse, the purpose of the Vedas, the understanding of the Vedas, and the goal of the Vedas are clearly defined. Hare Krishna. Text 16. Dvau imau purushau loke charas chak shara evacha charak sarvani bhutani kutasto chara uchate. There are 2 classes of beings, the fallible and the infallible. In the material world, every living entity is fallible, and in the spiritual world, every living entity is called infallible. Purport. As already explained, the Lord, in his incarnation as Vyasadeva, compiled the Vedanta Sutra. Here the Lord is giving, in summary, the contents of the Vedanta Sutra. He says that the living entities, who are innumerable, can be divided into 2 classes, the fallible and the infallible. The living entities are eternally separated parts and parcels of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When they are in contact with the material world, they are called Jiva Bhuta. And the Sanskrit words given here, Chadak Sarvani Bhutani, mean that they are fallible. Those who are in oneness with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, are called infallible. Oneness does not mean that they have no individuality, but that there is no disunity. They are all agreeable to the purpose of the creation. Of course, in the spiritual world, there is no such thing as creation. But since the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as stated in the Vedanta Sutra, is the source of all emanations, that conception is explained. According to the statement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krsna, there are 2 classes of living entities. The Vedas give evidence of this, so there is no doubt about it. The living entities who are struggling in this world with the mind and 5 senses have their material bodies which are changing. As long as the living entity is conditioned, his body changes due to contact with matter. Matter is changing, so the living entity appears to be changing. But in the spiritual world, the body is not made of matter. Therefore, there is no change. In the material world, the living entity undergoes 6 changes: birth, growth, duration, reproduction, then dwindling and vanishing. These are the changes of the material body. But in the spiritual world, the body does not change. There is no old age. There is no birth. There is no death. There, all exists in oneness. Chada sarvani bhutani. Any living entity was come in contact with matter, beginning from the first created being, Brahma, down to a small ant, is changing its body. Therefore, they are all fallible. In the spiritual world, however, they are always liberated in oneness. Text 17. Uttama purushas tvanyak paramat metyudaritaha yo lokatrayam avishya bibartyam yaya ishvara. Besides these 2, there is the greatest living personality, the Supreme Soul, the imperishable Lord Himself, who has entered the 3 worlds and is maintaining them. Purport. The idea of this verse is very nicely explained in the Katha Upanishad 2.2.13 and Shvetashvatara Upanishad 6.13. It is clearly stated there that above the innumerable living entities, some of whom are conditioned and some of whom are liberated, there is the Supreme Personality, who is Paramatma. The Upanishadic verse runs as follows: Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitananam. The purport is that amongst all the living entities, both conditioned and liberated, there is one Supreme Living Personality, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who maintains them and gives them all the facility of enjoyment according to different work. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. A wise man who can understand him is eligible to attain perfect peace, not others. Text 18. Yasmat chadam atitoham aksharad apichotama atosmi lokibede cha pratitak purushotamaha. Because I am transcendental, beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as that Supreme Person. Purport. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, neither the conditioned soul nor the liberated soul. He is therefore the greatest of personalities. Now it is clear here that the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead are individuals. The difference is that the living entities, either in the conditioned state or in the liberated state, cannot surpass in quantity the inconceivable potencies of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is incorrect to think of the Supreme Lord and the living entities as being on the same level or equal in all respects. There is always the question of superiority and inferiority between their personalities. The word Uttama is very significant. No one can surpass the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The word Loke signifies, in the Purusha Agama, the Smriti scriptures, Agama, as confirmed in the Nirukti dictionary, Lokyate Vedartho Nena. The purpose of the Vedas is explained by the Smriti scriptures. The Supreme Lord, in his localized aspect of Paramatma, is also described in the Vedas themselves. The following verse appears in the Vedas, Chandogya Upanishad, Tavad Esha Samprasado Smach Charirat Samutaya Padam Jyoti Rupam Sampadaswena Rupana Binispajate Sa Uttama Purusha. The Supersoul, coming out of the body, enters the impersonal Brahmajyoti. Then his form remains in his spiritual identity. That Supreme is called the Supreme Personality. This means that the Supreme Personality is exhibiting and diffusing his spiritual effulgence, which is the ultimate illumination. That Supreme Personality also has a localized aspect as Paramatma. By incarnating himself as the son of Satyavati and Parashara, he explains the Vedic knowledge as Vyasadeva. Text 19. Yomam evam asamudo janati purushotamam sasarva vid bhajatimam sarva bhavana bharata. Whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. Purport. There are many philosophical speculations about the constitutional position of the living entities and the Supreme Absolute Truth. Now in this verse, the Supreme Personality of Godhead clearly explains that anyone who knows Lord Krishna to be the Supreme Person is actually the knower of everything. The imperfect knower goes on simply speculating about the absolute truth. But the perfect knower, without wasting his valuable time, engages directly in Krishna consciousness, the devotional service of the Supreme Lord. Throughout the whole of Bhagavad-gita, this fact is being stressed at every step, and still there are so many stubborn commentators upon Bhagavad-gita who consider the Supreme Absolute Truth and the living entities to be one and the same. Vedic knowledge is called Shruti, learning by oral reception. One should actually receive the Vedic message from authorities like Krishna and his representatives. Here, Krishna distinguishes everything very nicely, and one should hear from this source. Simply to hear like the hogs is not sufficient. One must be able to understand from the authorities. It is not that one should simply speculate academically. One should submissively hear from Bhagavad-gita that these living entities are always subordinate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyone who is able to understand this, according to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, knows the purpose of the Vedas. No one else knows the purpose of the Vedas. The word bhajati is very significant. In many places, the word bhajati is expressed in relationship with the service of the Supreme Lord. If a person is engaged in full Krishna consciousness, in the devotional service of the Lord, it is to be understood that he has understood all the Vedic knowledge. In the Vaishnava Parampara, it is said that if one is engaged in the devotional service of Krishna, then there is no need for any other spiritual process for understanding the Supreme Absolute Truth. He has already come to the point because he is engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. He has ended all preliminary processes of understanding. But if anyone, after speculating for hundreds of thousands of lives, does not come to the point that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that one has to surrender there, all his speculation for so many years and lives is a useless waste of time. Text 20, and this is the last chapter, the next text in the chapter. Iti guyatamam shastram idam uktam mayanaga etad budva buddhiman syat kritakritascha bharata. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and it is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. Purport. The Lord clearly explains here that this is the substance of all revealed scriptures, and one should understand this as it is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus one will become intelligent and perfect in transcendental knowledge. In other words, by understanding this philosophy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engaging in his transcendental service, everyone can become freed from all contaminations of the modes of material nature. Devotional service is a process of spiritual understanding. Wherever devotional service exists, the material contamination cannot coexist. Devotional service to the Lord and the Lord himself are one and the same because they are spiritual. Devotional service takes place within the internal energy of the Supreme Lord. The Lord is said to be the sun, and ignorance is called darkness. Where the sun is present, there is no question of darkness. Therefore, whenever devotional service is present, under the proper guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, there is no question of ignorance. Everyone must take to this consciousness of Krishna and engage in devotional service to become intelligent and purified. Unless one comes to this position of understanding Krishna and engages in devotional service, however intelligent he may be in the estimation of some common man, he is not perfectly intelligent. The word anaga, by which Arjuna is addressed, is significant. Anaga, O sinless one, means that unless one is free from all sinful reactions, it is very difficult to understand Krishna. One has to become free from all contamination, all sinful activities. Then he can understand. But devotional service is so pure and potent that once one is engaged in devotional service, he automatically comes to the stage of sinlessness. While one is performing devotional service in the association of pure devotees in full Krishna consciousness, there are certain things which require to be vanquished altogether. The most important thing one has to surmount is weakness of the heart. The first fall down is caused by the desire to lord it over material nature. Thus one gives up the transcendental loving service of the Supreme Lord. The second weakness of the heart is that one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature. He becomes, as one increases the propensity to lord it over material nature, he becomes attached to matter and the possession of matter. The problems of material existence are due to these weaknesses of the heart. In this chapter, the first 5 verses describe the process of freeing oneself from these weaknesses of heart, and the rest of the chapter, from the 6th verse through the end, discusses Purushottama Yoga. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports to the 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad-gita in the matter of Purushottama Yoga, the yoga of the Supreme Person. Hare Krishna. That's a mouthful. A little food for thought there. All right, anything that stuck out? Anything that... Any reflections? Any comments? Any... Yes, sir.
Okay, I got something that kind of stuck out to me. As we're reading this, I'm thinking, I'm not going to die. And then I'm like, well, okay, I'm not going to die, I know that, but it kind of actually started to mean, I don't understand a little bit down below. It's hard to explain it, but you know you're not going to die, but to really to grasp that the spirit doesn't die, and to kind of try to understand it, is that learning by oral reception?
Yes. I should have, I was so absorbed in what he was saying and also trying to find what I was going to say. No, that I need to repeat it. This is very important, actually, what you just said. Repeat what you just said.
Okay. I was just thinking
This is Bhakti John speaking from his oral reception of the Absolute Truth.
That I started to kind of grasp the idea.
He started to kind of grasp the idea while you were reading this chapter?
While you were reading the chapter.
Oh, while I was reading this chapter. Okay. Hare Krishna.
And I was thinking, maybe I'm talking wrong, it's like, well, I'm going to die one day. Well,
He thinks maybe I'm talking wrong, that I'm going to die one day.
I have to start saying, no, my material body will die. But
I have to start saying my material body will die, but I won't die.
And I kind of grasped that fact.
A
little bit more.
little bit more.
And then I was reading on here that...
Then I was reading in here that Vedic knowledge is Shruti.
Learning by oral reception.
Learning by oral reception.
Not oral, but oral.
Oral reception.
Is that what that is?
Yes.
Oral reception?
Yes, that's what oral reception is.
Okay.
Because Vedic sound is called Shabda. Shabda is transcendental sound. And this Shabda sound, when it goes into the ear and through the mind, if it can go through the mind, that's why submissive oral reception. If the mind isn't submissive, then it stops the sound and it starts to do something with it in the mind. Wait a second. That is not what I remember hearing something else, and then by the time you say all those things in your mind, what the hearing sound, the sound goes by and you miss it. You don't hear it. It's like if your mind wanders and you're talking to somebody, then what do you say? What did you say? Huh? Huh? In other words, you have to be attentive. You have to hear in order to have a conversation with people. You have to hear. But one thing is that if you are attentive and you're talking with someone that you care about, then your mind is automatically controlled. If you're interested in the person, if you really are interested, if you're not just putting on a show, which many people do in this world, more and more, there's watching TV and things are going by so fast they can't even see one frame to the other. Then when they get to people out in the world, they're just like, their minds are going, and they can't even connect with each other. So Shruti means to hear with attention, with rapt attention, with care, with faith, with love, and without argument. That is a verse, and a number of verses actually, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, the author. He says, if one can hear this philosophy, if one can hear the pastimes of the Lord with full faith and love and without argument, then the sound itself wakes up the soul. The soul is there, and all this knowledge is there. This knowledge is not something that you take in and then memorize and then pass a test and get your degree and then you're home free. Then you can get a good job or so whatever. It's not like that. This is meant to wake up the soul. It's just like at night when you go to sleep. You set your alarm. I haven't used an alarm clock in 30 years. And I get up every time when I ask the soul, the super soul, wake me up at such and such a time, whatever time it is. It works. It takes practice. That's why it says there again and again, it takes practice. You have to hear, then you have to try to understand, and then you have to try to apply it into your life. And what you just said is the beginning of that application. I guess I better stop saying that I'm going to die. Actually, if you remember, I don't know if you were here that night, but when we read the 12th canto of the Bhagavatam, there was a chapter towards the end that said the last instructions of Shukadev Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit. Do you remember that?
I don't think I was here for that.
Anyway, there was a chapter, the last instruction, the final instructions to Maharaj Parikshit by Shukadev Goswami. And the first verse was, stop thinking that you're going to die. So, conscious or not, you're getting it, and you repeat, and what you're saying was actually the last instruction of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And this is proof that it's there in the heart. This is proof that you could say something like that just after hearing, the 15th chapter of the Gita. So if you continue to hear, if you continue to try to understand, and what it means, the other day I had Marcella read that verse and the purport, the Gita 434. Just try to find the truth by approaching a spiritual master, hear submissively, serve, and then you can get the knowledge. So in the purport, it said that you have to not only hear from the spiritual master, but you have to get a clear understanding. So get clear understanding means that you don't let anything go in that you don't understand. If something goes in that you don't understand, make a note and then ask. And keep asking until you understand it. I worked for 5 years with Gopi, Puranadana Babu, the senior Sanskritist in our movement. And I was editing the Priya Bhagavatamrita under the guidance and direction of Jayadvaita Maharaj, senior editor, English editor. So Gopi used to, he was so smart and so honest that he would not translating something that he didn't understand. And he was so loyal that he never went outside to other lines of authority. But every once in a while he'd come up with something that was a really difficult passage and he didn't understand. He couldn't get it, and he needed to get it because there was a deadline. So he would find a scholar somewhere that he trusted, that was in our line or something like that. And every time, he told me, he ran up against something like that. When he went to this so-called high scholar, they also didn't understand it. And so he just waited, and he kept trying to understand until he understood it, and then he translated. And therefore, if you read the translation of, well, he was doing he helped finish the Bhagavatam, part that Prabhupada didn't finish. There's a team of 3 devotees that finished it. He was in that team. So this is the process. Submissive oral reception means you hear sincerely, honestly, without envy, and you try to understand. And then when you hear something that you should do, then you try to do it. And then gradually, by doing that, year after year after year after year, it may take a long time. After all, it's the best thing. We're going for the highest thing. We're going for the spiritual body, the spiritual world, eternal life. Full bliss, full knowledge. That's the goal. So if it's hard to do something mundane in this world, win a World Cup or whatever happens to be going on at the time, NBA Finals or whatever it is, get a gold medal in the Olympics, win the, Wimbledon championship, whatever it is, takes hard work. These people really work hard and if they get expert, then they get really good, and they become, not indefeatable, but nobody, they're said here, everybody in the material world is fallible. So there's no one who becomes, infallible in the material world. So that's the process. You stay loyal to your spiritual master, you stay loyal to Krishna, and keep hearing, and trying, and serving, and eventually you wake up. And then it's not a matter of is it or isn't it, It's just like you were studying, I'm sure when you started to learn about electricity, you didn't know everything. Probably got a few shocks along the way. You were trying to, whoops, that's the wrong way, boom, and you go flying across the room or something, In Europe it's 240, so when you get a bolt, you really get a bolt, Here it's only 120, you get double the bolt in Europe. But gradually, you get to know, and then you know what to do. Then you become what? A master electrician. Are you a master electrician? Mm-hmm. Yes, I thought so. So it's the same. It's a spiritual subject, and you have to become a master of that subject. And all the thoughts seem to be simple, and they seem to be repetitive, but they're very subtle and they're very deep. And sometimes it'll take lifetimes. But Lord Chaitanya came here, and Prabhupada came to the West. For the first time, a pure devotee came to the West. And he gave this knowledge in a language and in a way that even us Westerners, without so many spiritual qualifications, can understand. And all he asks us to do is to chant Hare Krishna, take only Krishna Prasadam, follow these 4 regulator principles, and read his books. That's it. And if you do that, you'll go back to Godhead. Because comes that time to leave the body, you're not going to die.
My material body.
That's right. But it's not easy, because leaving the body is the most difficult thing. There's nobody that you can. I was with Prabhupada when he died, when he left the body. He didn't die, but he left the body. It was not easy. But he made it look easy. He made everything look easy. But if you know you're not going to die, then you just tolerate. You learn to tolerate. When your mind gets disturbed, when you get really upset with somebody or something, and you're just about ready to stomp out and whatever, do something crazy, you just tolerate. And just keep tolerating, and keep hearing, and keep serving. Keep praying. the process of devotional service. And eventually you'll be able to leave the body, and you will want to leave the body. Okay, enough is enough. You serve all your lifetime and you're ready to go back to Krishna, and you say, Krishna, okay. It's still tough when you take that last breath. You can imagine what it's like not to take a breath. You can't take a breath. Last one. So it has to be very, your faith and your realization has to be very strong, but it can be done. And then if you can't quite do it, Prabhupada promised us this. He said, if you follow the 4 regulator principles the rest of your life and chant at least 16 rounds after you've taken initiation, you will go back to Godhead in this life. So then you'll say, oh, that's too easy. Really? How many people have done it? Count them. Out of all the people of the world, not very many. But Krishna says, don't worry, because even if you don't quite make it, whatever you've done in this life, in your next life, you'll take up from where you left off, and it'll be a lot easier. This is faith. And reliability over time breeds faith. And when Krishna has enough faith in you, we talk a lot about having faith in Krishna, but if you act in such a way as that Krishna will become faithful in you, and when he becomes faithful in you, then the deed is done. Because even if you're not ready, he will come that time of death and he'll take you back. Prabhupada promised us that. And if the pure devotee, liberated devotee promises, Krishna feels obliged to fulfill that promise. That is the secret to making advancement in spiritual life, and the secret to going back to Godhead. Hare Krishna. Thank you for that lovely question and reflection. Thank you. Okay, I got to rest my voice now because I got to go tomorrow morning and read Hare Krishna, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki jai, Shri Krishna ki jai, Gaur Premanand.